I'm Lou Belmont, the Chief Customer Experience Officer for Howard County Library System. And welcome to AI in the Community, a conversation exploring the social impact of artificial intelligence. I'm so glad you could join us today for this important and timely discussion. And I'm thankful for the great turnout. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. Howard County Library System is your place to learn, grow, and connect. And tonight's program reflects that mission. It's made possible in part by the Friends Foundation of Howard County Library System and through a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Whether you're here out of curiosity, concern, excitement, or all three, you're in the right place. We're living in a time when AI is rapidly reshaping how we work, learn, communicate, and make decisions. From personalized learning platforms in schools to machine learning models that support city infrastructure, AI is already deeply woven into the fabric of our lives, even if we don't see it. This evening's about pulling the thread into the open and asking together, how is AI showing up in our local community? How is it affecting our schools, our jobs, our environment? And how do we respond in ways that reflect our values, our priorities, and our hopes for the future? Tonight's program is designed to offer both insight and dialogue, and cookies. We'll begin with a keynote from someone who brings deep expertise and thoughtful perspective to the intersection of technology and education. Crystal Trice is a national presenter, educator, and award-winning public librarian with over 2 decades of experience in libraries and education. She's founder of Scissors and Glue LLC, where she partners with local government and education professionals to spark practical and transformative change through interactive training and hands-on workshops. Crystal holds a Master's in Library and Information Science and a Bachelor's in Elementary Education Psychology. She is also a certified Scrum Master, which she may explain to us later, a testament to her ability to help teams work together effectively in times of rapid change. Whether she's speaking about project management, conflict resolution, or artificial intelligence, Crystal brings clarity, warmth, and real moral insight to every conversation. We're thrilled to have her with us tonight to share her talk, AI in Education, Embracing Change and Managing Attention. She'll explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping classrooms, teaching practices, and parental engagement, and how educators and families can navigate these changes with confidence and care. Following Crystal's keynote, we'll move into a panel discussion featuring local experts using AI in a wide range of fields: education, environmental engineering, wildlife management, and beyond. I'm excited for you to hear how AI is being used right here in our own backyard to reflect on what it means for our broader community. We'll close this evening with maybe the most important part of our conversation. This is your opportunity to share your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, and your ideas. We want to hear from you because building a future with AI that is ethical, inclusive, and responsive starts with listening to one another. So thank you again for being here. Your presence tonight sends a message that the future of AI isn't just about algorithms and data, it's about people. It's about us. And now I'm keynote speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed that, and thank you for being here tonight. It's so great to see you. I bring you greetings from Oregon. That's me, but a while ago. And you can see that I am looking at the camera with cautious curiosity, and I still have that today, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, that cautious curiosity. And I still wear a lot of hats. You probably do too. Some of the hats I wear, as they mentioned in the bio, is educator, librarian, and farmsteader. And with that mix of roles, then I have to always balance things like optimism and skepticism, and also tradition and innovation. And when it comes to AI in education, we're being asked to embrace massive change. And we can also manage the very real tensions that come with it. That's what we'll talk about tonight. So I invite you to approach the topic like this kid with cautious, what did I say? Cautious skepticism? I think that's a good way to approach this topic. Open-eyed, a little bit curious, and a little bit skeptical. All of those will work. So let's find out more about you and your hats. I'm going to say some of these things out loud. I want you to raise your hand if you are these things. A parent or caregiver. Cool, lots. A grandparent. Nice. A student. Yay. Educator. Excellent. Library staff. Okay, now I know where they are. Okay. And technologist just means, you're interested in technology, you work in technology. And community member. Should be everybody, right? Except me. But I am thrilled to be here for Oregon today, and I am a community member, just not your community. Okay, let's find out something a little bit more internal now. This is your AI attitude that you're bringing today, okay? And you can raise your hand more than once because you can be skeptical and excited at the same time. So maybe you're skeptical, questioning the hype, worried about risks. Anyone? Okay. Worried, anxious about change, kids, jobs. Cautiously curious. Okay. Overwhelmed. Me. Sometimes I'm just not quite sure because the change is so fast. Neutral. Just here to learn more. Anybody neutral? Ooh. We're all on one side or the other, I think. Hopeful. Anyone? Okay. Ready to see potential for good. And excited. Ready to explore. Okay, good. So whatever hats you wear or how many other hats you're balancing tonight, I hope this session gives you something to take back to your own personal life, your family, your workplace, all of those things, or your own learning journey. Now, what about ChatGPT? How familiar would you say you are with that particular AI tool? Very somewhat not too familiar or not familiar at all. We'll do hands for this too. We'll start at the top. Very familiar. Okay. Somewhat familiar, all right, not too familiar, and not familiar at all. Okay, we had a pretty good bell curve. I don't know if you noticed that as we went, but I would say a little bit more on the top two. And let's talk about, for those that are on the bottom two, let's talk a little bit about what this tool is. What is ChatGPT? Well, it was developed by OpenAI, and it can chat with users. It's meant to be a conversation between you and the tool. And it can help answer questions, help with writing, solve problems, and it uses a large language model called GPT, which now stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Now you know. So generative means it generates. It's not like a Google search that you type in something and it gives you a static list back. It generates each word. Like when you're texting and it tells you the next word it thinks you want you to say. It's like that, but at a much bigger scale. Pre-trained is all the training data, books and websites and all kinds of things that it's trained on to help us. And then Transformer is the architecture behind it so that it works quickly. Well, I'd like to know a little bit about the tools I'm using. And it was developed by a company called OpenAI, which was founded in 2015 by famous people that you hear all the time now. Sam Altman is still involved in it, but also Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and other names that are still very much in the news. And it was founded as a nonprofit research. And their mission is to develop artificial general intelligence that benefits humanity. Just gonna pause for a minute, because have you seen that movie? Do you know when we try to design things that are supposed to help people? Have you seen those movies? It's a little bit scary. And artificial general intelligence would be like C-3PO, the gold guy in Star Wars that is sentient and he can do all kinds of things and he has feelings. And so that's artificial general intelligence. And that's their mission. Well, they developed ChatGPT and it came out as a free research preview in November 30th, 2022. And depending on your point of view, that wasn't that long ago, right? That's less than, how long ago? Is that 2.5 years? Am I right in my math? I should ask ChatGPT. I think that's 2.5 years ago. That's not very long, but boy, have things changed since then. And you can access it right now if you want to. I'm not asking you to, but you could, chatgpt.com, and you can, it's still free, but you can get an account, and you can also choose to pay them different amounts each month to have access to the more premium things that are coming out. And generative AI, like ChatGPT, is being adopted at a pace we haven't seen before. This is why this is disruptive technology. So these charts show how quickly it reached 1 million and then 100 million users compared to other technologies like Spotify, Facebook, and Twitter, and Netflix. A lot less. Look, 1 million users in 5 days and 100 million users in 2 months. That's incredible. It's the fastest growing consumer application in history. In this January, there were 4.7 billion site visits to ChatGPT. That's the most by far. So even if we'd rather sit this out, we're not very excited about ChatGPT or other tools. It really is part of our everyday life. We don't really get an option to sit it out because our students, our kids, our communities are starting to use these tools in different ways, and that's why it's important for us to feel comfortable talking about it, which I'm glad you're here to talk about it tonight. And that way we can support others and ask those good questions, no matter where we personally stand. So this is research done by Impact Research, and they surveyed 1,000 people in 4 groups: K-12 students, undergrads, teachers, and parents. And they've asked them different questions. I'll show you different charts from their data that recently came out. And one of the things they found out is that almost everybody, over 3/4 of people, are at least somewhat familiar with ChatGPT. That is a lot more than used to be, the last surveys that came out. And we'll look more at key stats from the study in a little bit. All right, those of you that use ChatGPT, there's also a never option if you never do. But those who use it, you can choose from these options almost every day, a few times a week, once a week, every once in a while, or never. So who says they use it almost every day? How about a few times a week? Okay, once a week. Okay, every once in a while, and never. Okay, nice. Well, this is these groups, teachers, K-12 students, undergrads, and parents, and what they found is that about half of the people that they surveyed, and it's nationally representative across demographics and such, about half are using it once a week or more. That's the green. That's a little more than I thought. How about you? I was kind of surprised. Once a week or more, about half. Now, these are all in the education sphere in some way, but that's still a lot. But it is important to note here that there's 1/4 of teachers and K-12 students not using it at all, and still, you know, parents and undergrads not using it at all either. Oh, and the biggest increase was with K-12 students. It increased, oh yeah, 26 percentage points since last year. That's a big increase in a short time. Okay, when you use ChatGPT and you make an account, you have to agree to their privacy policy. I'm going to show you that now.
Short.
Did you get it? Are you ready for the quiz? Yeah, it's a lot. There, it started over again. So now you can get it the second time. Yeah, it's a lot. In fact, for most of us, whenever we see privacy policies for anything that we're using, it might be TLDR. TLDR is an abbreviation. This comes from Merriam-Webster, and it means too long, didn't read. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at clicking the button. Yes, okay, yes. But I'm sure you know, in library land, it has a lot of good practice, right? And especially for generative AI, because with generative AI, it's designed to learn from our input. So we really should know a little bit about the privacy policy. But we can use chatbots to help us summarize the privacy policy. And I've done that for you in collaboration with ChatGPT itself. This is what ChatGPT thinks parents and educators should know from the privacy policy. And it always gives me emojis. I think it knows I like them. And so it's not for babies, apparently. It's not for kids under 13. And teens ages 13 to 17 need parent-guardian consent. This is because of the Child Online Protection and Privacy Act, which is from 1998. This act has been in process for a long time. And so this is no different than any other online requirement. But it is sort of surprising because can a 12-year-old go to chatgpt.com and use it? Sure, they don't have to make an account. Could they make an account and say they have parent-guardian consent even when they don't? Of course, but that doesn't mean that it's legal for them to do it. And it also, the privacy policy says it collects what we type, say, or upload to improve its services. And by default, anything that we share as a free user or as a plus user, I'm a free user, I don't pay for it, it may be used to train models. However, they do have some opt-out options. So we can turn off the training and the settings or use temporary chat so that the data is not saved or used. And it gives us helpful tips. And all of that long thing, it has some helpful hints. Don't enter names, contact details, or private information because it may be stored and can't always be removed. So a best practice is to not put that kind of information into ChatGPT. So we just looked at the too long didn't read version of OpenAI's privacy policy, and while that's important to understand, today I want to suggest that TLDR stands for something else. It is a framework for action for strategies that parents, educators, and community members can use to promote responsible use. And the T stands for transparency, being open about how we use AI and how it works. L is for leadership, modeling thoughtful, ethical behavior. D is for discussion, creating space for questions, curiosity, and critical thinking. And R is for responsibility, helping people understand their role in using AI ethically. So in this case, TLDR isn't skipping the details, it's really diving in. So let's talk about each of them in more detail. First, for transparency. All of these images were created by Canva AI, unless it's otherwise. And those robots are hecka cute, are they not? And so for citing usage, I try to make it a best practice, like I just did, to always cite when I'm using AI. And I prefer to do so informally. I might, I might say in a meeting, hey, I was collaborating with ChatGPT right before we met, and here's an idea I thought was really neat. What do you think? And the reason I do that is because it normalizes the use of AI tools in appropriate ways, and it keeps transparency about my work. I'm not taking credit for what I'm not doing. So yeah, I gave you that example already, but I might also put at the end of an email, I used ChatGPT to polish this email before sending it so that it was clear and concise. I hope it was. And I'm just putting a shout out for citing longer if you're doing any sort of research or writing, and you really want crystal clear clarity about the collaboration that you're doing with these tools, then there are ways to do that and to do it effectively. All right, the L stands for leadership. And leadership in the age of AI doesn't mean we have to be experts, thank goodness, because it's hard to be an expert in this field. It means being curious, proactive, and visible. So here are some ways we can do that. We can learn about tools. That's what you're here for tonight. And we can share what we've learned with others. We can model responsible use. We can ask good questions and have thoughtful reflections. We can push for clarity in any organization that we're involved with that's using AI. We can push for clarity. Hey, how did you select which tools you're going to use? Have you considered changing your privacy policy because of how people might misuse these tools? And finally, speak up because your voice matters. As schools and community organizations decide how to use AI, they're making choices that affect students, families, and educators, and you can and should have a say in how these tools are introduced and used, and your perspective is critical in that. All right, let's take a moment before we We did the T and the L, transparency, leadership. Before we do the next, let's think about other generative AI tools. So shout out if you know any other tools besides ChatGPT for text generation. Any ones you've heard about, tried out?
The Chinese one. Can't think of the name off the
DeepSeek?
top of my head.
Yeah.
Claude.
Claude. Copilot. Yeah. Good.
How about Gemini?
Yes, Gemini. And another one I had on here was Perplexity, which is really good for summarizing articles if you haven't tried it. I like it for that. What about image generation? Making pictures. Canva. The others? You're going to recognize them when I put them on the screen. Adobe Firefly, Canva, Crayon, Dolly, and Midjourney. And then there are many for audio video that are coming out, and there's many for education specifically. I don't know what you have in your local schools here, but Magic School is pretty common. We'll hear from a school representative later about what tools maybe that he uses. And like any fast growth technology, there's always new tools. Do you remember with VHS and beta, do you remember that race? This is like that. So we're not sure which ones will be around later, but there's always new tools coming out. And it's almost impossible to keep up, but I want to focus on one tool in particular because it's really helpful for discussion, and it's Adobe Firefly. It's an image generator. And so here's Adobe Firefly. This is a screenshot from their website. And it is an image generator. You type text in, and it will make images. And it's also an excellent way to demonstrate what hallucinations are. So hallucinations are inaccuracies in the output. And let's do an example. So the example is, I typed in a librarian helping a child pick out a book. And here's what it showed. Well, first it looks pretty good. But there's some problems. Some inaccuracies, some hallucinations. What inaccuracies are you seeing? I know you're saying things, but I can't hear you. Yeah. So the book on her arm right here is a little odd. Yep. There appears to be, well, I mean, that could happen, but he appears to be missing a finger. Would you let a librarian hold your baby that way? Probably not, right? Unless it was a family member or something like that. So this is probably a mom, not a librarian, right? The book doesn't really have a typo. Anything else? It's a lot in one image, though. I mean, at very first glance, you're like, oh, that's nice. What'd you say?
The display of the books looks too mature for that little baby.
They are not in the children's section. I don't know where they are. It looks like a university library, maybe, or some kind of educational library. Yeah. What'd you say?
Maybe it's just.
Oh yeah, he's definitely advanced, no doubt, as all children are. Yeah. Yeah. And so this shows us, doing something like this visually shows us that there are inaccuracies in the output that comes from generative AI. So it's important to double check the results. And that's true of text generation as well. And that brings us to the discussion. So we did transparency, we did, come on, can you remember? Because okay, thank you, because I was starting to fade myself. Okay, so now we're on discussion, and I think that's my favorite part. That's why I'm so excited about tonight, about understanding AI. And so later tonight, you'll have a table discussion. We're going to do a preview of that now. And the way we're going to do a preview with that right now, this is a quick warm-up, is I have different questions on the screen that are about what we just saw, about that image, about that experience. So you'll turn to one other person, make sure nobody gets left out. You'll turn to one other person and you'll discuss it for about 1 minute each. You pick which question you want. You won't have time to do all 5. So if you don't know, just pick the first one. But you could just pick a question and then talk about it for about 1 minute. There's a little timer at the bottom. and then switch and ask the other person. So this is just a little warm up to our discussion later, because discussions are important. All right, here you go. All right, let's talk about responsibility. That's our last item. We have transparency, leadership, discussion,
Good speaking to you.
and then we have responsibility. And the first thing I want to say is before we share information we get from these tools, we should sift it. S-I-F-T. That stands for something. It stands for stop, investigate the source, find trusted coverage, and trace claims and quotes to the original context. It's a good thing to do with anything we see online, and don't you wish all your Facebook friends did that? We also need to understand the AI limits, because AI doesn't know things, it predicts things, and that means we're responsible with what we do with the output. And so I recommend, if you have a student in your life, giving them an AI learner's permit. And so they get to practice using it responsibly with guidance before they drive alone. And that's because there's real consequences if we misuse these tools, just like on the road, and it's about building good habits. We should also report and repair. Sometimes the output could be harmful or biased, and if that happens, talk about it and report it if you can, because these tools are learning and hopefully getting better.
Where would you report it?
To the, ChatGPT people. It'll be at the bottom. It'll say, who asked? It was a good question. It was a great question. Yeah. At the bottom, it'll have a contact us, and you just follow their steps and contact them. And you have to say, like, this is what happened, and here's why I'm concerned about that. Use AI to support learning. So we're not trying to replace learning with AI. In fact, I had several conversations before we started with you all about that idea. We want to support. We're not looking for shortcuts for learning, because learning is hard work, as you remember from being in school. I'm going to tell you a story here as we're ending about a young woman named Mari, and she'd gone to visit her cousin, and he had just started community college, and he said, oh, I've got a paper due in an hour, and she said, don't you think I should leave? He said, no, I'll just use ChatGPT. She said, hey, you're just starting your academic career. I don't think that's a good idea. He said, oh, I did it in high school, it's fine. Well, she saw him a couple weeks later, and she said, how's it going? He said, well, I had to drop out of half of my classes. And she said, see, you haven't been learning, you've just been using shortcuts because, oh, hold on, trying to drive here. I need my own computer driver's license. It doesn't want to work. There's too many things up here. Well, because shortcuts aren't always shortcuts, right? Sometimes a shortcut makes us have to go the longer way. And that's true for all of us. So I don't know about you, but I'm not as good. We were talking earlier about GPS. I'm not as good at navigating as I used to be. Definitely not good at mental math anymore, because I always have a calculator with me and my phone. And so sometimes when we over-rely on technology, our skills get less dull. And so there are some hallucinations in this image, definitely. You'll see that. But that's okay, because it's here to illustrate a powerful analogy that I heard recently from another educator. If you're training to run a marathon, you probably shouldn't just like hop in a car and drive to the finish line, right? You gotta walk and train and run and build endurance over time, and then after you finish the race, maybe you can take a car home. And it's the same with learning. Before we rely on powerful tools like AI to make things easier, we need to build those underlying skills. Oh, anything that makes you shudder from your childhood, like long division or writing long essays, or I don't know, what else?
Organic chemistry.
Yes, me too. I still have nightmares about organic chemistry. Yeah, essay writing, I don't know, logical reasoning, like geometry, theorems, and stuff like that, because struggle is part of growth. And when we've developed a foundation, then we're well poised to judge the output and challenge it when needed and build on it meaningfully. And this chart shows the same thing in a little bit different way. because by double-digit margins, teachers, K-12 students, and parents all believe chatbots can be used legitimately in education, that's the green. But undergrads favor thinking that they will most likely be used by students to cheat. And what's interesting is that perceptions of AI's legitimacies are deeply tied to personal use, and those are the numbers here at the bottom. So if you've never used any of these tools, then you definitely think that the tools will be used for shortcuts. And so the challenge for us as people interested in education is, it's also an opportunity, is to guide students early with care, responsibility, and practice time so that they develop the judgment they need to use these tools ethically and effectively. Because even though a lot of undergrads think that people will use it to cheat, they're still favorable towards chatbots, and most people are. And and teachers have dipped down a little bit in a year, and that's kind of understandable because they're hitting AI fast and furious. But AI tools aren't going anywhere. They're really becoming part of how we teach and learn. So I'm just wondering if you've had a change of hat here at the end. You can raise your hand more than one. Skeptical, worried, cautiously curious, overwhelmed, neutral, hopeful. Oh, more hopeful. Excited? Oh, okay. Well, all these words are valid, and even though generative AI is in a very fast phase, we're not in a sprint. We're in a marathon too. And so there is time to have these thoughtful discussions like we're having tonight so that we can stay current and really be part of the community discussion. And I just wanted to say thank you for your time and energy in this first part. We have 3 parts tonight. And if you're still feeling a little bit underwater, just keep swimming. You don't have to do the marathon, just keep swimming. Because we'll get there together.